The child was born but couldn't sit still. 86 years later with no regret. You know that man can't sit still yet. The Great Depression couldn't get him down. He worked for his dad's store in town, collecting money in small amounts for poor whites and blacks in their furniture accounts. Stetson Kennedy wants us all to be free. Stetson Kennedy wants us all to be free. As he'd collect, he'd talk to folks. He'd hear legends, tales, songs, and jokes. Now this fine treasure he'd record and write. He was colorblind, didn't see black and white. Writer's project for the WPA. Zora Neale Hurston, he earned his pay. Crackers and blacks, they talk for hours. It was a barefoot history, this land of flowers.
The week that was on the 13th of January 2018. Establish a few mileposts here. This is episode 2653. Quite a few episodes from the start of episode 1, which we started in 2008. We're rolling in on 10 years here. And 2.6 and counting a million people have come by to see us at our new internet radio station, WBRN Radio, here in Boston. So we moved along with the Boston Red Network, consolidating our programs. The consolidation is obviously not completed as of yet, but we do have our technical program, the Open Source Report, our macroeconomics program, Numbers Man, known as the Numbers Man Show. All of those are seen on these networks. And Boston Red on the World is also on many of the same networks on iHeart. These are the iHeart stations. And we're coming with all about sports. We haven't done the first episode yet, but we will. So lots different from doing episode 1 to doing episode 2653. But we all have to start someplace, so that's how you start your episodes out, and you continue on. As far as the political broadcast, Boston Red, one of the better and more prolific works, a scope of work, I should say, on the American body politic and what is called psephology. We deal here with polling and the interpretation of polling, that is psephology, and we throw in some of the latest in political science. We try to woven all that in, and the political news and commentary as we move along. That's what we attempt to accomplish here, a little different from some shows. We are progressive in nature. We always have been progressive. We supported Barack Obama, and we now support Bernie Sanders and his Our Revolution movement. Tina Turner, Ms. Turner, the former state official from Ohio, and we continue to support those progressive types of people. We use a major polling. We'll have some polling here from our friends at the Pew Center. We'll have one of their polls. Also from the Business Daily poll there, one of the better polls out there, on DJ Trump, where DJ Trump is. What's the gap between DJ Trump and the optimism gap? Some of the measurements there with DJ Trump. We do cover DJ Trump, but not exclusively to other people. DJ Trump and his various machinations and rouges and whatever else he's performing are out there. As Professor Reich, he's out of Berkeley University, said, the president is a racist. Well, that has been long established. It's not that he... there's a journalistic shorthand, racially charged terms. Well, that's just a way of saying the man is a bigot. And that is the way it goes out. The policies themselves go much more than on a quote-unquote personal level just with DJ Trump. This is not about DJ Trump. This is about the direction of the American country, all 52 states and 30-something million plus people that inhabit it, the various races. As a right-winger Scott, he's the governor of Florida, said they have about 200 languages in Florida. We'll be talking about the effects of Trump's stance. Now, this is has always been one of the big problems with the right-wing movement. And Steve Bannon is to be thanked for bringing that out in 2016, that it is a racial movement, a racist movement. The alt-right is alt-white. Now, why some of these other characters in there, specifically people of color? I've noticed they have been using a lot of Asians as figureheads there when they can't find African Americans or other stooges to set in there. But these right-wingers, what DJ Trump's doing, this is a service he also gives out there. He's basically telling people when he labeled substandard countries, talking about Haiti and various others. Incidentally, the ambassador to, what was the canals? I'll check in a minute here. But anyway, one of the ambassadors, a career ambassador, resigned that he could not serve under the administration of DJ Trump. Panama, we'll get it right, the canal zone. Anyway, nonetheless, it is a changing situation, and it's changing in the Republican Party. You can't have, as the old adage go, your cake and eat it too. You simply cannot be a doctrinaire, a right-winger in this formation, because this formation is fascistic, which means it is taken on the legs of a normal fascistic model as espoused by Goebbels and Schicklgruber, the Hitler and their PR master, and as put forth in the fourth party by the Russian, you can't, the fourth way, or what do you want to call it? Anyway, that is basically where the alt-right people get their intellectual sucker, so to speak, that they use. So these other right-wingers that come on, and there are a lot of them, professional right-wingers, particularly the ones of color, and specifically the African Americans, they are not wanted, not part of this. They are nothing but stooges, and that is it. And not very good stooges. This is why Scott and the people in Florida are upset, because a lot of people down there that voted Republican, specifically the various Latino groups in Florida, they have put them on notice where they stand in the scheme of things. And I don't know who in the Haitian community voted or didn't vote for this character, but there are a lot of bourgeois Haitians in Florida. Not all the Haitians there are of the working class. So they have been put on notice. This thing now is more and more Eurocentric. And that is the one accomplishment that this administration has brought forward. The Republicans, since Tricky Dick, have preached the Eurocentric party. They piggybacked on George Cooley Wallace and his rhetoric of the 60s, and back even to Strom Thurmond. So the states' rightist thing, you don't hear much about it now, but that is basically what it's all about, and it will continue to be. Let's go to Mary Landrieu. Mary Landrieu was a quote-unquote conservative Democrat that was finally defeated and put out to pasture in Louisiana, but she's not finished as of yet. This is from the International Business Times by Alex Koch, I guess is how you pronounce his name, on the 12th of January. She's representing a pipeline company while influencing the permitting process. This is how this whole thing plays out and has continued to play out. Landrieu represented the state of Louisiana from 1997 to 2015. He's a registered lobbyist for the Louisiana Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority, an entity within the office of the governor with a mandate to develop, this is worse than I thought it was, to develop, implement, and enforce a comprehensive coastal protection and restoration master plan. She's also a paid consultant for these characters, you remember them, Energy Transfer Partners, the major owner and operator of a proposed crude oil pipeline, which needs the approval of the CPRA before completing the last leg of the project. Landrieu, who has a history of supporting oil and gas industry, told an angry crowd of Louisiana residents that the pipelines are currently the best way to transport crude oil. Shifting away from fossil fuels might happen one day, but it's not today. This is the same thing that Pruitt, but DJ Trump's energy department would say. As carefully as possible, she said her role as an energy transfer consultant, not a lobbyist anymore, at the Baton Rouge permit hearing on Thursday. Landrieu is many of former lawmakers who have taken to lobbying after retiring from Congress. About half the former senators go through a revolving door to lobbying after leaving office and try to influence their former colleagues in Washington with the law firm of Van Ness Feldman. She represents a variety of clients, including the oil gas industry, Noble Energy, of which she lobbies on oil gas exploration, Xavier University's cigar trade group, and in August of 2017, Landrieu registered to lobby for the CPRA, and in that year, third quarter, she represented the CPRA, seeking laws and executive branch policies that expedite the permitting process to protect and resurrect Louisiana coastline. Meanwhile, as the energy transfer consultant, she was making the case for the pipeline's completion in January of 2017. She began testifying on behalf of these energy transfer partners. In February, she wrote an opinion piece for the Advocate, that is in Louisiana, supporting the pipeline. The final 163-mile segment of the pipeline would cut through the Atchafalaya Basin, a National Heritage Site, and America's largest national swamp. Didn't know that. That's spelled Atchafalaya. Opponents say the environmental damage would be catastrophic and should the pipeline leak into the basin. Energy Transfer said in an email statement to International Business Times that the pipeline has been approved by all the required agencies. I don't doubt that, including the CPRA. We're excited to have the conclusion of more than a 2-year permitting process and planning processing. Looking forward to mobilizing for construction. Landrieu and the PRA did not immediately respond. I imagine they did not. In the recent investigation of conflict of interest, the Bayou Bridge Pipeline, Robert Galbraith of the Public Accounting Office initiative detailed how Energy Transfer and Phillips 66, a petroleum company, and the other companies participating in the pipeline venture previously donated to old Landrieu's political campaigns. The company's executives donated $41,000 to a campaign in 2009 and to 2014, according to data compiled by the Citizens for Responsible Politics. And what else is here? Energy Transfer's biggest recipient of campaign cash in Congress, DeSmog pointed out, is ConocoPhillips, which used to be Phillips 66, gave her the $40,000. So she's been, and the Keystone XL pipeline, lifting the moratorium there. So this is old Mary Landrieu here, the Louisiana Coastal Protection Restoration Authority, Energy Transfer Partners. and various other people here. Thomas Williams, the Big Easy Committee. Oh boy, this person is owned and operated by the interest. I appreciate the person that tweeted that to us. Anyway, let's move on with our normal countdown here. We have Uncle Carl today, as we normally do on the week that was. We wouldn't want to leave Uncle Carl out of it here. And let's get to it. We'll start out here. This is the Washington Post. We use them many times. Now, this is, we talked about Scott in Florida and the posts in their power posts. Republicans in immigrant-rich Florida scramble in wake of Trump's remarks. There's a picture here of old DJ Trump and old Scott. There is two asshole countries at the Oval Office meeting with lawmakers. The governor there, Scott, a close ally of the president, is courting to run for the U.S. Senate, scrambled to distance himself from the controversy. They all are running for the hills. Republican strategists and activists, worry about the fallout in a battleground state that is home to one of the country's largest population of Latinos. The president's victory hung heavily on his surprise win in Florida. It wasn't much of a surprise win to us. We had forecasted he would win Florida, which Republicans are trying to build on this year's midterm election, but to drag on his polarizing actions and words can be felt acutely in some quarters of the state, where marquee elections for a Senate seat and the governorship will play out this year. It's not helping. That is from Michael Bennet, vice chair of the Florida Republican Party. Bennett, now this is one of these stooges out here, is an African-American attorney in Palm Beach County, which is close to the Haitian community there. Some Republicans quickly condemned the remarks. Marco Vegas Rubio issued a series of tweets praising the Haitian Americans for their contribution to the country. Hours after that, Carlos Cabrero, another Republican Latino stooge who is running for re-election in battleground South Florida district, tweeted under no circumstances acceptable to degrade, generate, or dehumanize immigrants who are in the United States on what is known as temporary protection status. After the Hurricane Maria, Trump told local officials that they should feel very proud they haven't lost hundreds of lives like a real catastrophe of that. Anyway, this is just a history of Trump-isms. Florida is a home to 1.1 million and counting Puerto Ricans, separately only to New York. At least 100,000 expected to relocate in Florida. Most recently, the administration announced plans to expand oil drilling there in most waters, kind of on a shelf, a move opposed by governors in New Jersey and Florida. Bill Nelson calls it a political stunt. That's the idea of not drilling in Florida. In a written statement, Scott repudiated Trump's, and this is a journalistic thing here, coarse words. They weren't coarse words. They were racist words, and the Washington Post, being a monopoly there, should understand that. If this report is true, it is absolutely wrong. Now remember, he said if, the infinitive if. It is true, it's absolutely wrong to say or think this. I do not think this way, nor do I agree with this kind of sentiment. I represent Florida, and we're an amazing melting pot. Actually, I said, 100 to 250 spoken language, quite a few, but a lot of retirees there. I work every day to make this the most welcoming state for everyone, Haitians, Cubans, Venezuelans, and others from around the world that call Florida home. Our friend H lives in Florida. I wonder what H says about this. Anyway, the estimate here is 830,000 people in the U.S. of Haitian descent. About 2/3 live in Florida. around 376,000 and 191,000 in New York. So most of the Haitians live in Florida and New York, not quite 1 million. In the big scheme of things, that is really not a lot of people, but the deal included a solution for dreamers, that's young immigrants. We talked about that before. And there was an idea of what's called diversity visa lottery that would distribute 50,000 visas annually to nations with low rates of immigration to the U.S. Well, that died, so we don't even have to worry about it anymore. And that is basically it. Bennett, who helped arrange a meeting with Trump and the Haitian community in South Florida during the campaign, was on the tarmac with 6 Haitian passengers when Trump flew in. Now, this is part of the stooge game here. These Haitian passengers, just as they use African-American passengers to put over a right-wing message. They should be ashamed. I'm not going to be diverted from all possible efforts to continue to negotiate to reach a deal. That is from Diaz-Balart, Mariano Diaz-Balart. He's been a representative in Florida for a very, very long time. We talked about the work requirement for Medicaid here, and this is, let me see, is this the... this is their editorial here, but in other words, in contrast to those of advanced industrial democracies, well, not necessarily democracies, but the advanced industrial nations, especially in Europe, the systems of social insurance, income support distribution benefits basis not only on membership in society, but also on the work effort, the past and present. In the realm of health insurance, this means that instead of adopting a universal coverage as a nation's legal standard, then diverting a unitarian system to meet its goals. The U.S. cobbles together many programs, no doubt about that. A plurality of adult citizens get tax-subsidized insurance through their employers. Most retirees get a Medicare paid for out of deductions from their past paychecks. Many other poor children, people with disabilities, obtain insurance from programs where the promise is that the recipients are neither expected nor able to work. That's what's called disabilities there. There is no actuarial sense, but because the need for health care and work are not necessarily connected, it creates an impediment to the workers' mobility known as job lock. It creates a large and catastrophic coverage gap for working age and non-disabled adults who lack jobs or whose employer does not provide any insurance coverage at all. Subsidize individual market by admitting millions of working age adults to Medicaid. This was progress, both ideologically and substantively, and the Trump administration, no doubt about that, would require able-bodied workers to work to be on the program. This is a solution in search of a problem. The majority of targeted populations already work 60% or live with a work of 90%, according to the Kaiser Foundation. 8 states have petitioned pending that. The state of Kentucky has already got the so-called waiver, and they will be requiring people to work. But in reality, very, very few. Just has been approved. Other states that did not, and now Kentucky under Governor Beshear was the only state in the South that actually had Kentucky Connect, that actually had a functioning health site up, and we of course sponsored that, or promoted, I should say. And of course, people who can't meet a work requirement will not cease seeking aid, no doubt about that. The ERs will move along. And let me just, we'll go to the Pew, Super tight. Companies struggle to retain workers. There's no doubt about that. They spotlight a man named Sandlin. He's tried everything. He's boosted pay. He's in Iowa. He runs something called Patriot Transportation, hauling oil tanks. I've been in business since 1984, and I've never seen what we're dealing with in terms of hiring people. He said. I said he's in Jacksonville, Florida. His trucking firm drivers' pay is going to have to continue to go up, and customers, of course, obviously going to pay. They pass it on. This is a full employment looks like. Well, there's more on one side of the so-called full employment, which they peg at 4.1%, leaving employers to struggle to attract and retain good workers and raising the prospects of higher wages in the U.S. as it approaches a congressional election in November this year. Employees today have lots of options in the corners of industries, whether you're in a fast food or retail. Well, a lot of retail businesses have closed, and investment banking, that is from Art Mazzara, a partner at Deloitte Consulting. This feels super tight. Well, it hasn't got super tight yet, but part of the problem is baby boomers increasingly retiring, and as baby boomers retire, and also we'll talk more about this on Numbers Man, our macroeconomic show, but part of the problem here is also, for instance, in retail, when Walmart, Sears, etc., Macy's, these stores close down permanently. Those workers are thrown out into the pool of the reserve unemployed. And when they find new jobs, many times it's not in retail. So they have left retail behind. Same things happen with the Sam's Club workers that are not absorbed into the fulfillment centers. Those 63 that were closed down, many of them will leave the industry. This is just a result. As far as raising the hourly, well, if everyone does it, it has a minimal effect. Hourly to $11 from $9 and $15 at some of these other places for basically people that do clerical work. In September, we had a rise in wages of 3.2% compared with 2.9% for the same period 1 year ago. So that's a 1% and 2.2%. So in other words, the last 3 years or so, this is economist Jim O'Sullivan of High Frequency Economics. Well, what has basically been happening here, there has been an increase of at least 2.9, 3.2, 2.9, 2.2%. So there's been a gradual raise. There's also a rise there. Now, employers face especially darkening landscape. This is Ames, Iowa. The nation's lowest at 1.5%. Local Chamber of Commerce trying to help recruit workers. Far away is North Carolina. You'll have a lot. You've had this before. The Mary Grizzly Hospital, no doubt named after old Senator Grizzly. 220-bed place in Ames. They're having problems finding people, so they are bullying in non-traditional workers, retirees, seniors, entry-level clerks, housekeeping, and valet parking. I guess the medical centers now got valet parking. Anyway, he's raised salaries. This is Curtis Nelson, fourth-generation owner of a century-old electrical business there. He's raised doubled efforts to recruit young people, put in apprenticeships. He's got 70 workers in his firm. So they had a layoff there, evidently by DuPont, announced the close of a local cellulose ethanol plant. 90 workers found themselves jobless right before Thanksgiving. The Ames Chamber contacted them within a week, acting as a matchmaker for companies with vacancies. Many soon landed positions at firms like Hatch Chemical, etc. So this goes back to Sandlin at Patriot Transportation, said hiring difficulties increase as the economy heals from the punishing recession. No doubt about that. He has 600-person payroll. He said he could easily boost it by a 10% if he could find the people in Jacksonville. So this is basically it. He said the construction industry has complained about a shortage of experienced workers. In surveys the Association of General Contractors released earlier this month, 78% of respondents said they're having a hard time finding qualified workers, an increase from 5% increase. Not that many, but again, this is an example. The construction industry died during the Depression. Thus, workers were thrown out. Anytime workers are thrown out of a sector, they go to other sectors, and they normally don't come back because after 3-4 years out of it, people age. They're no longer, say, 25, they're 30, or they're no longer 30, they're 35, etc. So they've gotten out. And this is Michael Strand. He's with the American Enterprise Institute. We still have some slack. The unemployment rate continued to fall without sparking a significant increase in inflation. Well, this is, there's slack still there. There's no doubt about that. Out in Wichita, Aero Systems will take up some slack. The makers of airplane fuselages. Anyway, we'll hire 1,000 workers over the next 5 years. Part of its expansion, but that's over 5 years. Tight labor markets like to persist over the next decade, 10 years. Baby boomers will retire, but you'll have some relief from automation. They don't talk about that. An anemic workforce rise will snap the country's forward momentum. Now, that is a big problem there. We'll talk about this also on Numbers Man. This is one of the situations that come. We'll fall short of scope by, while most economists expect Trump to fall short of his goal of 3 to 6% growth. This is through 2027. ODJ will not be around then to grow at an annual rate of about 1.8%. That is pretty much characteristic. Let's go to Uncle Carl Robe here. Psychiatrist with press pass long before presidential elections. The populist candidate's mental state was under attack. The New York Times ran a series over several days suggesting that he was unfit for office. It includes a letter from an anonymous psychiatrist diagnosing him as megalomania, saying he presents in speeches and actions striking and alarming evidence of a mind not entirely sound. Another piece, and this is Uncle Carl himself, is playing psychiatrist with as a pundit here. One psychiatrist refused to call the candidate ordinarily crazy, but added, "I would like to examine him," while others said he was beset with what I believe to be delusions. But the dear readers hold your amusement and your rage. These articles appeared in, I see, in 1896. The victims of the Times insane the assault was not Donald Trump, but William Jennings Bryan, the Democratic nominee. He was running on the gold standard, was a silver standard anyway, one of those, out of Nebraska. He was also the guy that was in the famous Skokes trial later there. It is a reminder that the media frenzy this week about Trump's mental acuity isn't the first time the question has been raised about a White House occupant or a presidential candidate. Well, William Jennings Bryan ran for president as a populist, but he didn't get there. Now, the current configuration was set by, this is back to Michael Wolff's book, Fire and Fury, a lengthy tabloid gossip article masquerading as a book. This is something Uncle Carl put in there. Well, no doubt it was a gossip type thing, a Hollywood Reporter, National Enquirer type things, but DJ Trump is a creature of that particular region of the mind of journalism. It includes a genre of unusual collection of anonymous quotes, unsolicited descriptions, and clever insinuations, all heavily influenced by the author's liberal biases. The book contains little that will change the opinions of either Trump haters or Trump lovers. Some of the material is obviously score setting by West Wing adversaries. There, some of it is spicy, some is sensational gossip. A good portion of it can never be confirmed. Some already has been credibly denied. My assessment is that much of the book is probably untrue, but most of what is current Americans know already. Well, that's the same thing we did in our review there. It's pretty much public knowledge. A portion of text undermines the author, not his target. Consider Chapter 8, where Wolf writes at length about conflicting approaches of 3 aides. Wolf's telling of Chief of Staff Regis Phillips. Priebus, he's no longer around, was cultivating congressional Republicans to advance the Trump agenda. The son-in-law there, Jared Kushner, was concentrating on the president's bona fide, and CEO roundtables, and senior Steve Bannon was focused on succession of executive orders, no doubt about that. And this is one of the things, those actually did play that would move the new administration forward without having to wade through Congress. The president, according to Wolf, didn't understand why he couldn't have all of them, no doubt. But why couldn't he? One that can criticize the effectiveness of Mrs. Priebus, Kushner, Bannon, but even every Oval Office occupant wants Congress to pass his agenda, seek support amongst outside constituencies to advance his program, and use his power as chief executive to advance his policies as much that the authority allows. If someone here doesn't understand how the presidency functions, it is Wolf, not Trump. Well, no, Wolf understands how the presidency functions as far as that, yeah. And there's some more of this we don't have at this time around. We can probably go and find it somewhere. This is a poll we wanted to look at here. This is from the Investor Business Daily, one of the polls out there. The January poll finds 35% approve of DJ Trump, while 58% disapprove, a gap of 23 points, which is unchanged from last month. Trump's favorability rating is 36%, with 57% saying they have an unfavorable rating of him. However, the poll also found that 45% now approve of how Trump is handling the economy, which is up 5 points. In December, that was 40%. This represents more than a 10-point gain from August. 34% then approved of his handling of the economy. 41% approved of how he handled the threat of terrorism, supposedly. Most Americans give Trump credit for his handling of the economy. That is from Technometrics Marketing Intelligence. I wonder if they used to do this. Anyway, but this isn't translating into high overall approval ratings. Mishra. Anyway, I hope I'm pronouncing his name. Because Trump never gets fair treatment in the daily discourse of the mainstream media, some of whom are still deny that he won the election. There is an under-reporting of positive and over-reporting of negative. So that is not correct there. Trump himself is the man behind his negatives primarily. Not to say that others come out there. Nationwide poll was conducted from January 2nd to January 10th. Includes response from 901 adults, giving a margin of error of 3.3%. No hidden agenda. Trump's low approval numbers. We've seen this also in other polls. For example, 57% in the latest poll say the economy is improving. That is up from 53%. Just 17% say the economy is in a recession, which is down from 19%. Well, again, that's... And they have here Trump's unusual approval gap, while 44% say they are satisfied with the direction of the country, which is up from 41% a month ago, and way above the 37% in President Obama's 2 terms. Well, part of the reason in Barack Obama's 2 terms is that there was a massive campaign to delegitimize President Obama. The economic optimism index has been in positive territory, meaning the index reading of over 50. These are like the PCIs that we do for 15 straight months in the previous 8 years. This index topped 50% only 9 times. Well, you were in a depression, you would not expect this. This is a little bit more biased here than what they usually do here. Quality of life saw a 7% bump to reach 60.9, the highest level since Trump took office in President Obama's last year. It was 54.6%. Anyway. Also tracks unemployment. This month, the share of adults looking for work was 11%, which is down from 13.8% a year ago. Other polls have found similar gaps there. The Quinnipiac poll, for example, found 66% said the economy is excellent or good, which is the highest number recorded by this poll yet. Trump's approval number is just 36%. The IDP has pointed out the gap between economic optimism and the presidential approval is unusual since they tend to move in tandem. That suggests that Trump's approval ratings could climb if the press and public decide to give him credit for the good. Now, Pew found that 95% of stories about Trump in his first months in office were negative, most of any president it looked at. Mayer noted that this is M-Y-U-R, how you want to pronounce it. In the current climate, getting a good job approval ratings is difficult. Part of that is because the partisan nature of the country out here. All right, let me just move here and do the sports. Look at our time here. Go to ESPN. Yeah, it's time to go there. We always introduce this program with a man that was anti-racist, named Stutson Kennedy out of Jacksonville, Florida. Let me do the NBA first, and then we'll do from last night. The Jazz were at the Hornets. Hornets 99-98. The Cavaliers lost their game to the Pacers in Indiana 97-95. Blew a lead there. The Magic and Wizards in D.C. The Wizards 125-119. The Nets and Hawks in Atlanta. Nets 110-105 for the Hawks. The Warriors and Bucks in Milwaukee. 108. Warriors at 94 for the Bucks. The Bucks have been in trouble ever since Kareem left. The Knickerbockers and Timberwolves in Minnesota in the ice. 118-108 for the Knicks. The Trailblazers and Pelicans in the Big Easy. 119 Pelicans. 113 for the Trailblazers of Oregon. The Grizzlies and Nuggets in Denver. 87 for the Nuggets and 78 for the Grizzlies. And finally the Rockets and Suns in Phoenix. 112 for the Rockets and 95 for the Suns. On to the NHL. The Canucks and Blue Jackets. Well, there's also some Yellow Jackets running around. Anyway, Canucks 5-2, and the Vancouver Canucks and the Columbus Blue Jackets. Oh, okay, that's why. That's Columbus, Ohio. Now, the Flames and Panthers, 4-2 Flames over the Panthers. The Flames out of Calgary, the Panthers out of Florida. The Capitals and Hurricanes, Capitals 4-3 over the Hurricanes. And the Jets and Blackhawks of Chicago, Jets 1, Hawks 2. And finally the Oilers and Coyotes. The Oilers 4-2 in that contest. The Oilers out of Edmonton, Canada, and the Coyotes are out of Arizona. So some of these new, and Winnipeg has changed their name to the Jets now. Okay. I forget what Winnipeg used to be. Doesn't matter that much. Anyway, we had a number of stories here on the Vegas shooter, a deletion of a Facebook account here. This is out of the Las Vegas newspaper, the Las Vegas Review Journal. Within hours of the massacre, 58 people were dead. The Metropolitan Police investigators noticed that Mary Lou Danley, the girlfriend who was in the Philippines, deleted, she turned her Facebook account private at 12:30 and on October the 2nd, and by 2:46 a.m. in an affidavit there, it was deleted. There's 300 pages that were delivered to journalists. Authorities released the names of Dantley. The documents are made public. A lawsuit by, in fact, the Vegas Review-Journal and other media outlets. We're glad the federal courts, there was nothing there. The man is dead. There's no suspects, according to the managing editor of the Review-Journal, Mr. Cook. With the shooter dead and no indication that co-conspirators were involved, authorities had no legitimate reason to lock down the records related to their investigation. They are doing the public business, and the public business must be public. Padlock's email accounts, they've investigated those. Evidently, he was sending something to himself. He identified one as Central Park 4804 at Gmail. Another email linked to the shooter. Tried before you buy. It had a huge selection of locations in the Vegas area. A third email sent to Central Park from Paddock himself on the same day for a frill, try out bumper FR with 100 round mag. Anyway, whatever, more than 1,000 rounds were found. That was the general situation here. Investigators obtained DNA swabs from Dantley and one there. And she said her fingerprints could be on some of the magazines because she helped him load the magazines. So in the LA Times, basically, we had the same article here. Told investigators her fingerprints would probably be on some of the ammo. And in fact, they were. Mary Lou Dantley may not have been present when Padlock did his thing. The fact, amongst the details revealed in an order from the judge there in Las Vegas. She came to Vegas. He came to Vegas with the usual arsenal. He had 20 firearms, hundreds of rounds of ammo in his 32nd floor room. Authorities recovered 18 firearms and more than 1,000 rounds at his house in Mesquite, Nevada. A large quantity of firearms were recovered from another residence in Reno. So he basically put his stuff around. Dantley had fully cooperated with authorities, released a statement saying she had no idea what the boyfriend was doing. So Jennifer Dorsey said there was no reason to keep the records. We already talked about that. These email accounts that he had, Central Park 4804, sent email, he sent emails to himself. Well, that's no big deal right there. In an affidavit, investigators said they believe the communiques may have been related to the eventual attack. Authorities said he used something called a bumper stock device there. Investigators have been unable to figure out why Paddock would be exchanging emails related to the weapons that were utilized in the attack between his two email accounts. Who knows? They would never know. If the target account was not controlled by Paddock, need to determine who was communicating with him. Probably no one. There was also one revealed that his room had 3 mobile phones. 2 were unlocked, but neither contained any significant evidence there. And the third one that was locked, they were unable to deal with it. I guess they had to hire outside help. Anyway, that is a subtext to what we are doing. We'll see you on the Monday Morning Quarterback on Monday morning. Incidentally, we have special programming tomorrow. On Sunday, we will observe Dr. King's holiday. We'll talk about the health of African American women in maternity Serena Williams. We'll talk about her and some others, and we'll extend that to medical care. The racial differences within them is one of the things we'll talk about. That was some of the work of Dr. King, and now to the Reverend out of North Carolina. His Poor People's Campaign, we've been following him very, very closely there. And, of course, Jesse Jackson this weekend has a screening in Chicago. And we also will have Operation Push, and their Push observance on the 15th there in Chicago also. Have a good weekend, everyone. We'll talk to you on Monday morning on the Monday Morning Quarterback. And we have Numbers Man, the macroeconomics program, on many of the same outlets. We'll see about an open source report. Don't know yet. Good day.